A police report, really? Go ahead and file it if you can. She likes to push buttons and feels no guilt about it. I can't believe you'd say something like that, Hannah. The engagement is off. The wedding is definitely cancelled now. Kyle went to inform the staff about the cancellation and left the room with them to make the arrangements. It's your fault for saying such stupid things like a police report. Well, Kyle is a kind-hearted guy, and if he begs hard enough and swears to become our maid, I might forgive him. Is that so? Then, I will gladly sue you. My name is Hannah. I am a 28-year-old engineer. Since graduating from university, I've been dedicated to my job and have achieved significant results. Thankfully, my personal life is also fulfilling, and I am planning to marry my fiancé, Kyle, soon. Our first encounter dates back 3 years. At that time, I was assigned to a new project and dispatched to a major company, where I met Kyle on the first day during a meeting where he was introduced as the engineer in charge. He already had extensive experience in the field and a strong sense of responsibility as the project leader. Initially, I was drawn to his seriousness and professional attitude. As the project progressed, we found common ground in our passion for work and our perspectives. After sharing several meals after work, I opened up to his gentle humor and caring nature. One day, Kyle confessed his feelings to me. Working together, I've come to want to know more about you, Hannah. I felt the same, accepted his confession, and we started dating. Even as we began our relationship, we continued to value our work, while enriching our private time with various activities. On weekends, we went hiking together, explored new restaurants, and sometimes relaxed by venting about work. Kyle was always a supportive and encouraging presence. A year passed, and naturally, we started discussing marriage. We were both convinced that we had found a life partner, not just in work but for life itself. Then one day, I discovered I was pregnant. Mixed with joy and a bit of anxiety, I informed my fiancé, Kyle. Kyle, it seems we're having a baby. I announced it with a mix of anticipation and joy. Really? That's amazing, Hannah. I'm so happy. Kyle responded with a beaming smile. Let's tell my mom right away, she'll be thrilled. Ah, yes, we should report properly. I felt anxious about my relationship with Kyle's mom, Susan. Kyle's dad had passed away a few years ago, and now Susan was living alone. I felt like she disliked me. However, I had to get along with her for a successful marriage. I decided to visit Susan's house with Kyle to announce the pregnancy, believing she would be happy about the news of her first grandchild. We arrived at Susan's house, and I entered the living room holding hands with Kyle, feeling a bit nervous. It was just last month that I first met her, and she did not show a welcoming attitude then. Susan just glanced at me standing next to Kyle. Mom, I've brought Hannah. We've come to give our marriage greetings. Kyle initiated the conversation, and prompted by his words, I greeted again. Nice to meet you, I'm Hannah. Please take care of me. Susan responded with a simple okay. Even as we reported our marriage, she only answered so or I understand, and the conversation didn't continue. Eventually, the talk ended within minutes, and we left Susan's house shortly after. Having such a bitter memory made me very nervous about meeting Susan again. Kyle rang the doorbell, and my heart rate increased. The door opened, and just like last time, Susan greeted us with a cold expression. What brings you here? The marriage greetings are done, right? Actually, Hannah is pregnant with a new life. Mom. You're going to be a grandma. Kyle immediately announced the pregnancy, but Susan's reaction was unexpected. Such an important matter should have been reported in a more proper place, shouldn't it? She frowned and spoke sternly, without offering words of congratulations. I thought, why such a reaction? Does she really dislike me? While thinking this, I also felt maybe we should have indeed booked a restaurant for the announcement. By the way, what do you do for work, Hannah? Is your income stable? I'm an engineer and am currently involved in many projects. An engineer. Well, as long as the income is stable. Mom, don't be so stiff, Hannah is working very hard. Kyle tried to mediate with a bit of panic, and Susan continued questioning. By the way, what do your parents do? They are still working, right? Yes, my parents are still active in their jobs. I hope to discuss the details when we meet face to face. Well, as long as they're working. I wouldn't understand the details anyway. Susan's attitude conveyed that she wasn't very fond of me. For us to build a happy home together with Kyle, improving our relationship with Susan would be essential. After the greetings, Susan said, "I'll prepare some coffee," and went to the kitchen. It seems your mom doesn't like me much. Mom has her strict sides, but I cherish you, so don't worry. Kyle put his hand on my shoulder and smiled, but his smile seemed somewhat awkward. Later, Kyle and I talked about having our wedding before my belly got too big. I was a bit nervous about her reaction, but Susan surprisingly agreed calmly with, "Yes, that sounds good," which relieved us. That day, we managed to have a normal conversation without issues. A few days later, I discussed with Kyle about progressing with the meeting of both families. Actually, Mom said there's no need for a formal meeting. Maybe we can just go straight to the wedding. What, a wedding right away? I don't know about that. My family is also involved. And I'd like to have a meeting at least. I understand, Hannah. But Mom doesn't care much about formality. So I think that's why she's saying that. That may be true, but it's important for us and our families. Kyle, could you please talk to Susan about it again? Kyle pondered for a moment and then nodded. All right, I'll talk to her again. But what if she still says no? Then we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. I just want to do whatever we can. Kyle responded with a gentle squeeze of my hand, which offered me a little relief. But a bit of anxiety still lingered. Despite Kyle trying again, it seems Susan firmly said, "It's really not necessary." Deciding that pushing it would not be beneficial, I chose to proceed with the wedding preparations with Kyle. The thought of building a happy family with him and thinking about the baby growing inside me made my heart swell with anticipation and joy. I was full of excitement for our new life to begin. Finally, the day of the wedding arrived. I woke up feeling jittery, started getting ready with my dress and makeup, and decided to head to the venue a bit early. Hearing that Kyle had also arrived early gave me some peace of mind. When I reached the venue, the staff were busy with preparations. Dressed in my gown, looking at myself in the mirror, I felt the reality of the day. Kyle, too, was changing into his tuxedo in the dressing room, looking a bit nervous. There was still a slight awkwardness between us, but it felt like the beginning of a new chapter. Soon, it was time for our parents to exchange greetings. Susan approached my parents with a stern expression. My parents seemed a bit tense, but my dad stepped forward and greeted her warmly. Nice to meet you, I'm Hannah's dad. Thank you for today. Nice to meet you. I am Kyle's mom. Thank you as well. Susan spoke calmly, but her eyes were all over my parents like she was judging them. My mom followed with her greeting, and while it was a bit awkward, both families exchanged pleasantries. I hope today will be a wonderful day. When my mom said this with a smile, Susan finally seemed to relax and returned a gentle smile. Kyle and I then met again in the dressing room, feeling the reality of the ceremony about to start. I could see some nerves on his face, but the moment we held hands, the air between us softened. It's finally happening, Kyle said, slightly embarrassed. Yes, it is, I replied with a smile. The murmur of the guests could be heard from the venue, signaling the start of our wedding. I took a deep breath to calm myself, repeating in my mind that this moment marks the start of our new life. That's when Susan kindly spoke to me. Here, have some coffee. You seem a bit nervous, let this calm you down. Thank you, I said without suspicion and drank the coffee she handed me. However, I felt something odd the moment I drank it. I thought, this tastes a bit odd. What's wrong? Kyle asked, noticing my expression. No, it's nothing. Just this coffee is a bit odd. I trailed off, unable to shake the feeling. As I continued to drink, a sudden stomach pain struck me. Excuse me, I need to use the restroom. I stood up and rushed out of the dressing room to the bathroom. Why would my stomach hurt at such a time? In the restroom, suffering from severe pain, I remembered the odd taste of the coffee Susan had given me. It struck me then. She was smiling at the time, although she was interacting normally with my parents. That smile wasn't kind, it was smirking, as if she was plotting something. When I returned, Susan was still smirking. I intuitively knew her kindness was not genuine. What's wrong, Hannah? Are you feeling ill? Kyle asked with concern, but I was not in a state to respond. My suspicion that Susan had tampered with the coffee grew. Susan, did you put something in the coffee? I confronted her directly. Her smile widened, seeming to enjoy my suspicion. What are you talking about? Answer me. I started feeling stomach pain right after drinking that coffee. You must have put something in it. What if I did? She replied coldly, provocatively. That's it, you. I glared at her as I spoke. What are you saying, Hannah? My mom wouldn't do such a foolish thing. Kyle interjected, but I couldn't take my eyes off Susan. Kyle, your mom did something to the coffee. I felt it. My voice trembled. Susan continued to smirk. Well, if you think so, that's fine. At that moment, my parents entered the dressing room. Hannah, are you okay? I thought I heard you scream. My dad asked with concern. Dad, Mom. Susan. I tried to hold back tears as I spoke to my parents. My mom glared at Susan and sternly questioned, what happened here? Nothing at all. It's just Hannah being a bit oversensitive, Susan replied. It can't be nothing if she's crying like this, my mom stepped forward. And Kyle stood between them. Let's all calm down, it's our wedding day. Let's not argue over this. He tried desperately to mediate, but the tension only escalated. Kyle, do you really think Susan did nothing? I can feel something is wrong with my body. When I confronted him, confusion appeared on Kyle's face. At that moment, a staff member who had been preparing for the ceremony rushed down to the dressing room and announced, "It's almost time, everyone." But the room was already in chaos. Are you trying to ruin your own wedding? Susan glared at me with cold eyes. Just stop it. There's no doubt you put something in the coffee. I desperately held back my emotions as I burst out with that accusation. Kyle just looked bewildered and couldn't stop the atmosphere from deteriorating further. My mom's expression changed to one of serious concern as she heard my words. And she questioned Susan directly. Is that true? Did you put something in the coffee? Susan smirked at the question and lightly replied. Who knows? I don't remember doing such a thing. Tell the truth. This is a serious matter. My mom pressed her further. Susan's attitude then changed abruptly. How dare you? It's quite rude to accuse me like this when we've just met. Her response was full of anger. Rude? My daughter might be in danger, and you think we have no right to be upset? My mom stood her ground in response. Well, looking at Hannah, I felt she wasn't brought up well. But I guess like mom, like daughter. Susan provocatively shot back. What did you say? Say that again. My dad couldn't stay silent anymore and raised his voice. Laughter from the guests sounded like it came from another world, but inside this room, the atmosphere was as tense as a battlefield. I don't care about this wedding anymore. I finally lost my patience and declared. I will file a police report. I'll find evidence that you tampered with something. And make sure you're held legally responsible." At those words, Susan smirked even more, defiantly. "A police report, really? Go ahead and file it if you can." She provocatively continued without any hint of remorse. Hearing this exchange, Kyle finally spoke up. "I can't believe you would say something like that, Hannah. I can't be with someone who would accuse my mom and file a police report against her. The engagement is off." "Kyle." I was shocked by his words and lost for words. The room went silent in an instant. My parents were too stunned to speak. Staff came to check on the dressing room. But the wedding was clearly no longer the focus. "The wedding is definitely cancelled now." As Kyle shouted that, I realized the ceremony was irretrievably lost. Everything had fallen apart, and our wedding had turned into a disaster. Kyle went out with the staff to proceed with the cancellation. "Oh dear, you've just wasted a good chance to get married. You, a plain and troublesome woman like you. Will probably never get married now, will you?" "Well, it doesn't concern me as an outsider. It's all because you started talking about filing a police report." "Well, Kyle is a kind-hearted boy. If you apologize desperately and swear to become our maid, maybe I'll forgive you." "Is that so? Then, I will gladly sue you." "Huh?" When I looked down on her with such disdain, Susan's face turned red with anger. "I don't care what happens to you from now on. That's my line. You'll regret making us angry." With that, I left the dressing room with my parents. I will never forgive that woman. I vowed to bring her to justice and send her to hell. Little do Kyle and Susan know. But my dad is a lawyer and my mom is a police officer, both involved in law enforcement. That's why I can confront this issue with my parents' help. It's outrageous to tamper with the coffee of pregnant Hannah. If anything happens to the baby and it was intentional, it won't just end there." My dad said, visibly angry. "I really can't forgive them if something happens." My mom agreed. "Mom, Dad, what should we do? We have enough to sue." Fortunately, I am a lawyer, so we can take action immediately. "But first, Hannah, we need to go to the hospital to check your health." "I'll help too. I'll investigate Susan and Kyle's actions. We'll gather evidence and legally corner them." "Thank you, Mom, Dad, I believe in our family's strength. Don't worry, we're with you. Let's fight this together." Having received firm support from my parents, I first went to the hospital to check on my health. After that, I was determined to start the legal process. I feel I can overcome any difficulty with my family's support. Fortunately, the hospital tests showed no abnormalities in the baby. But the doctor sternly warned about the risks of taking laxatives during pregnancy, which made me feel a heavy sense of the seriousness of the situation. Then, I shared crucial information with my mom. I had brought back the paper cup that the coffee was served in. On a whim. At the moment I felt something was wrong with the coffee, I decided to take the cup with me. My mom took the cup, understanding its significance, and looked at it intently. This could be a significant piece of evidence. Let's find out what was mixed in. With that evidence, I believe we can bring to light the facts and enable legal action against Susan and Kyle. My mom decided to take the paper cup to a specialized institution for a component analysis. This became the first step for our family to tackle this issue together. She went to the police's forensic department to request the analysis, explaining to her colleagues that her daughter might have been intentionally harmed. They started the analysis quickly, and soon a shocking result was reported. This cup was contaminated with a laxative in a significant amount. Just as I suspected. This proves it was done intentionally. Thank you. With this evidence, I'll fight hard for my daughter, my mom said and filed a police report. This report will allow us to start an investigation immediately, she stated as she went back to the police station to proceed with the formalities. The officer in charge initiated the investigation promptly. Later, with approval from her superior, my mom was assigned to handle the case. This prepared us to legally corner Susan. That night, after returning home, she reported to my dad and me. The report has been accepted, and I've been assigned to investigate. Now we can legally corner Susan. Mom, thank you so much. The real challenge begins now. Let's prepare thoroughly and expose their wrongdoing in court. Yes, we mustn't let such actions go unpunished. To gather more evidence of Susan's purchase of the laxative, my mom decided to collaborate with her colleagues at the police station. If they could corroborate Susan's actions with evidence, it would clearly demonstrate her intent. We need more evidence to resolve this case properly. Let's find out when she bought the laxative. It would be good to check the security camera footage from the local drugstores. A colleague suggested, and my mom agreed. Since Susan usually only moves within walking distance, let's start investigating the drugstores near her home. I had previously taken a photo of Susan with my smartphone and sent it to my mom. When she and her colleague arrived at the drugstore, they explained the situation to the manager and requested to review the security footage. The manager readily complied, and as they reviewed the footage, they saw Susan purchasing the laxative at the checkout. The video clearly recorded her picking up the product and completing the transaction. There it is, no mistake. My mom pointed at the screen. She definitely bought the laxative. This proves she prepared it intentionally. Let's secure this video as evidence. Her colleague recorded the footage. This provided a strong piece of evidence for use in court. That night, my mom came home and reported this new evidence to my dad and me. The security camera caught Susan purchasing the laxative. This further clarifies her intent. We've got her now. There's no way for Susan to deny it. My dad was pleased. Really, thank you, Mom. With this new evidence, we decided to proceed with preparing to expose Susan's wrongdoing in court. However, Kyle's attitude at the time, defending Susan, had bothered me. I wondered if Kyle knew about the laxative. While my parents gathered evidence to expose Susan's crime, I also considered ways to confirm if Kyle was complicit. After much thought, I visited the wedding venue. I thought someone on the staff might know something. It was embarrassing to go there after the cancellation, but it was necessary. Upon arrival, I gathered my courage and visited the staff room, hoping to find new information, though I was anxious that nothing might come up. One of the staff members approached me, surprised to see me, and began to speak with a grave expression. Actually, on that day, I accidentally overheard a conversation between the groom and his mom. The content made it clear they were planning something. I listened intently, feeling heavy-hearted. What exactly did you hear? The staff hesitated but continued. They were the first to arrive at the venue, and I heard them talking in the dressing room. The groom's mom said, "Make sure the laxative is in the coffee," and the groom replied, "Good, that should do it. Let's proceed as planned." I didn't understand what it meant at the time, but now. Her voice trembled. Shocked by this new revelation, I thanked her. That's very important information. Thank you. This will be a major clue to uncover the truth. The staff also assured that she had not discussed this with anyone else, but was determined to testify for the sake of justice. I left the venue and immediately contacted my dad to report this new testimony. He understood the importance of this testimony and started preparing legal actions immediately. This made it clear that Kyle and Susan had plotted against me, making it clear that we were ready to bring their wrongdoings to light in court. With the support of my family and the brave testimony of the staff, I felt empowered to overcome this ordeal and decided to fortify my resolve for the upcoming legal battle. Believing in the power of the law, we formally filed a lawsuit against Susan and Kyle. On the day of the courtroom confrontation, Susan and Kyle were visibly shocked. by the unexpected development. They had thought there was no evidence, and thus nothing to expose, but when the paper cup and the wedding venue staff's testimony were presented as evidence, Susan and Kyle's faces turned pale. Further investigation revealed that Kyle had not been pleased about my pregnancy and had plotted to take away the baby and break off the marriage. Their selfish motives had almost cost me my precious unborn child. What? How could there be so much evidence? Susan muttered. Kyle's face contorted with disbelief. What you did is unforgivable. You will atone under the law. This can't be. We did nothing wrong. Susan shouted, her face flushed with anger. But the courtroom's silence rendered her outburst futile. The judge calmly delivered the verdict. The defendants are ordered to pay compensation for emotional distress and damages to the plaintiff. Oh, how did it come to this? Susan was disheartened and appeared indifferent. Kyle was also unable to hide his disappointment, muttering hoarsely about the unforeseen consequences. After the trial, my mom sent a police report to Kyle's workplace. It was necessary to clearly communicate his actions and their implications. Please look at this report, my mom explained to the HR manager at Kyle's workplace. His actions were completely irresponsible and deviated from social norms. He conspired with his mom to intentionally administer a laxative to his fiancée to induce a miscarriage, and he has been found guilty in a civil lawsuit. I am reporting this fact as a police officer. The impact of his actions sent shockwaves through his workplace. His behavior was deemed absolutely unacceptable, and after reading the report, his superior started a serious meeting. This behavior is unacceptable. Your actions could potentially damage the company's reputation. The HR manager also emphasized that Kyle's actions not only violated workplace regulations but also lacked consideration for his spouse. That's a misunderstanding. Kyle trembled as he tried to defend himself, but no one listened. He was then dismissed on the spot. Losing his social credibility, Kyle faced a great cost to start over. After the trial, both Kyle and Susan felt the stern looks from those around them. Especially Susan's actions became a topic in the neighborhood, attracting criticism. Her actions were recognized as socially unacceptable beyond mere family issues, and neighbors distanced themselves one after another. Thus, Susan and Kyle began to be isolated in their community. The social pressure on Kyle also increased. After being fired, finding a new job became extremely difficult. His actions had spread far beyond what he had anticipated. Then, a demand letter for damages sent by my dad, as a representative, arrived at their door. The claims for emotional distress and medical expenses during pregnancy were substantial, and Susan and Kyle were overwhelmed by the amount. Moreover, Kyle faced additional claims for child support for the baby that survived, further straining their already dire financial situation. They had to take multiple part-time jobs and incur debts to make payments. Thus, the lives of Susan and Kyle plummeted to rock bottom after the court's decision. With no job, Kyle was stuck working at a factory for a low wage. The grueling environment there was taking a toll on him, leaving him feeling worn out and stressed every single day. At night, his shift at a grocery store awaited him, making his days an endless ordeal of suffering. However, all this was the result of their choices. Meanwhile, I regained control over my life and started moving towards a new future. Overcoming this painful experience made me feel stronger. With the support of my family and friends, I began to feel happiness again. Although the ordeal made me distrustful of people for a time, as the wounds healed, I could open a new chapter in my life. Now, I focus on my work while building my own happiness. Challenges may lie ahead, but I have the strength to face them. Going forward, I intend to craft my life with my own hands. The hardship I overcame allows me to feel my current happiness more deeply. I will continue to believe in myself and move forward. The past experiences taught me that my choices shape my future. I cherish these choices as I eagerly await the birth of my child. I have taken a new step forward.